Hi everyone, this is Culture Mapping and your hosts, Konstantin, that's obviously me, and Anastasia.
Hi, in this podcast inspired by the book Culture Map, we are interviewing people from various backgrounds to learn more about their culture and their life, and their businesses.
Talking about businesses, Anastasia and I were both entrepreneurs. I am a co-founder of content production company Storm, and Anastasia is a co-founder of Movingo, relocation platform. And Culture Mapping is our own way to reflect on how to live a global life in such a fragmented world.
I'm happy to introduce our wonderful guest. Her name is Afaf and she's originally from Syria but studied and spent most of her adult life in the UAE. Afaf is a community builder and she's shared a lot of insights about the universal things that would be appreciated by the members of almost any community with almost any background.
But before the conversation, I would like to remind you about our sponsor. Well, it's currently very hot in Dubai. When I was driving to the studio, it was like 40 degrees outside. So I have an unusual recommendation how to keep your home fresh during the summer season. Get peonies from Flower Wow. These flowers not only add elegance, but also have beautiful scent that can rejuvenate your surroundings. From mid-May till the end of June, Flower Wow is celebrating Peony Mania, making it the perfect time to let these fragrant blooms blossom in your home. With Flower Wow, you can easily order peonies and other gifts for your loved ones, enjoying features like photo approval before delivery and the convenience of not needing the recipient's exact address. Download Flower Wow app through the link in the episode notes. And don't forget our promo code CULTURE. It's CULTURE that allows you to get 15% off on peonies or anything else until December 2024. We usually start with the basics so that our listeners get to know you better. So please tell our listeners your name and what you do, how you usually present yourself.
Interesting. So my name is Afaf. This is a very Arabic name. Not a lot of people know it. Even some Arabs don't know it. It's my grandmother's name. I think what's gotten me interested in culture was my personal background. Both sides of my family, my mother's side and my father's side, immigrated from Syria during the 70s and 80s, which means a lot of us got married to people from different cultures. And the latest count is we've rounded up about 20 nationalities across my aunts and my cousins and my uncles, my siblings as well. So I think from a very young age, I dealt with people who were very different than me, but it was normal. It wasn't pointed out to me that it's like, my cousin's wife's Chinese, but I was 4 years old. So for me, that was just matter of fact, right? And then growing up in the GCC as well, where you're surrounded by many different faces in your classroom, you're just like, yeah, you don't think for it to draw your attention. It doesn't until you go to somewhere else that's not diverse and you're like, I'm weird, right? I mean, that's not how I present myself typically, but that's kind of how I like to start the conversation about why I got interested in culture. So I moved back to Damascus during high school for about 4 or 5 years. And then I noticed around like when I was 15, 16, and I would tell people, I was like, my cousin, but she's half Emirati. And then in the same conversation, I'd bring up another cousin who's like half Pakistani, who married someone from Denmark. And then at some point, I remember one of my friends stopped me. He's like, what the hell is going on? I'm like, what's wrong?
How does it work?
Yeah, he's like,
who are you?
Yeah, he's like, what's wrong with you? And I'm like, okay, so maybe there's a design here that I wasn't aware of. This is what got me interested in thinking of culture in a very meta way. And then when I came back to Dubai, being aware of this, it helps you see, okay, how do we design successfully for this? How is this useful? Why does it matter? How do we have cross-cultural conversations in a way that's not tokenizing as well? Right? So like when I speak to my cousins, I don't speak to them as half Emirati, half Syrians. I just speak to them as my cousins. I speak to them as individuals. That's got me interested in shared spaces, right? How do you create shared spaces where people can walk in as individuals? So how I usually present myself is that I studied international development, which is political science and social science, and then government policy and humanitarian aid. So that is a very wide horizontal that we sit with for 4 years. But then throughout, you get into various verticals, right? But the linearity, so we don't come out as generalists because we're studying community development. In fact, we're just looking at a horizontal through specific verticals. So there is a linearity to our approach. So you get into fair trade, you get into economics, but then you also get into poverty, you get into education, you get into entrepreneurship. And then I started working within the social entrepreneurship realm. And then through that, because our training is both policy development and program development, that was very natural in the entrepreneurship space. So curating calendars and creating collaborations and bringing people together were skills that transferred very easily from what I studied to the private sector, or that particular niche in the private sector. And then that's how we naturally, and this is the interesting thing about culture, is that you don't intend to work in culture. It's something that's very, I think, within the weave of society. So when you're dealing with something like entrepreneurship, because entrepreneurs aren't the same, right? So again, it is a very wide horizontal with many different verticals. Culture will get in there, art will get in there. And that's how you start to sense, okay, what is natural about human beings and what is something that always tends to show up with us. So now with my latest job at MIZA, we're trying to create a cultural district, but we're also having trouble to define it because it's a neighborhood. But that's for us as people who come from sociology or come from the arts or the culture scene or so on. We know neighborhood is enough of a definition because we understand that it's meant to entail a lot. But then sometimes we feel like, should we say arts district? Should we say entrepreneurship district? Should we say creative district? And I think the categorization strategy differs depending on who we're speaking to. But it is a neighborhood, and we're trying to figure out what are the components? What makes a neighborhood successful? This would be like a summary of how I approach things. But for me, I think community development is a lot more than just gathering people. There's also a lot of mastery behind it. There's a lot of technical details. So a lot of people wouldn't think that sociology has technical details, but it does. Right? So how often are you bringing the same people back to the same room? What is the call to action, right? On what basis are they coming together again and again? All of this goes under events. But then I was telling the team the other day, I was like, listen, think of the word event like the word file, right? You have audio file, you have video file, you have document file. It's just a container, but it doesn't have to look like what we think an event should look like. So perhaps I want to achieve a specific goal. Maybe it shouldn't be a talk. Right? I shouldn't have a panel about coalition making because that's not how coalition making happens. Maybe it should be a series of labs, for example, or should be open sessions, etc. Again, I think I had the privilege of studying sociology, so I understand.
Where did you study it?
Middlesex University. So it was in Dubai for so many reasons, but yeah, I enjoyed it. My professors were great. We were a very small classroom, which was also very interesting. It was very intimate. We fought a lot, which was great.
Why?
Well, because I think that's what you're trained to do, especially when you're young. They have to make us kind of deconstruct how you form an opinion, right? And you shouldn't believe in your opinion too much. Collect your data properly, have more conversations. And I think with community or culture, there isn't one answer. Right?
There's always a dialogue.
It's usually a melody of things that work together, which is why, as you can already see, I go off on tangents in any answer I give, is that because whether it's policy or entrepreneurship or community development, it's never this one thing. It's never this one space. It's never this one program. It's typically a melody of things that need to come together in order for it to work. We're able to see this when we study history because you're kind of just reading about a people all at once. But then for some reason in our present, we strive for this kind of one massive event that's going to solve all our problems. But that's not the case, right? It is many different things working together at the same time, which is why we love the word ecosystem.
What was your first social cultural project that you worked on? Was it at the university or maybe at school?
So it was at university. I was a very loud 19-year-old girl. I was studying politics in 2011, which was very special because that's when the Arab Spring was happening. Being from Syria as well made it very personal. So you're kind of studying it live in a way. I went to a rap concert at a friend's university, and they were raising funds for the PCRF. And I think this is the difference, is that I'm not a jealous person. I'm a very collaborative person. So when I saw that event...
What is PCRF?
The Palestinian Children Relief Fund. This was their last fundraiser, actually, in 2012, I believe. I just went up to her. I'm like, how did you do this? And I think this is a character trait that helped me that I wasn't aware of. I'm going to do the same thing. Let's do it together. We spoke to the Red Crescent. We spoke to Red Bull. We spoke to a shawarma place, a pizza place. We spoke to the sponsor, a tourism agency. And basically, we flew in some underground rappers from the US. And we brought in some rappers locally. We brought in Dubamadi, which was the first comedy group at the time, and we put together a rap and comedy concert over a year, and then we had it in the beginning of 2013, and we raised 40,000 dirhams.
Wow.
The interesting thing is that it took so long. Like, I did this with friends and we were kids, and we put all of this together, and we didn't spend a dime. Everything was sponsored and people showed up and it was amazing. Funny thing is about work experience, it took me so many years for someone to just give me that job again, right? Because then you start with really lame tasks and then nobody kind of trusts you to handle something like this. And I'm just like, I've already done this. Let me do it. Get out of my way. That was my first event. People who met me there, I made so many friends during that event. People who met me there will talk about it. It shaped a lot of my approach in Dubai. I think it gave me a very positive view of Dubai because of the collaboration that happened all at once. And it shaped my approach with all my future jobs, with all my future events, with all the calendars I've curated or any programs I've created. I know that people are willing to collaborate and people are willing to come together. I think I was very lucky to have that first experience also go so well. Yeah, that was.
Can you elaborate on the approach? Like, what did you learn actually from this first experience?
So number one is that if you're excited about a program, somebody else is going to be excited. So I think me going up to Rawan, the girl I spoke to, and I was like to her, let's do this together. And she just said yes. And she was into it. And she had so much energy. And then going up to the main rapper we brought was Umar Afandam, just emailing him saying, hey, listen, we want to do this. We're bringing together other rappers. We're bringing together other comedians. And he was just in. And then because we believed in the project and really understood what we were trying to create, and when we would approach everybody, they would come back to us with the same energy. So I think don't wait for permission. Like, the idea doesn't have to be necessarily perfect, but do go for the right people. When you're working with someone that sees the value of what you're doing, they will believe in the project and the project will take off. Know who not to approach. So someone that doesn't understand your project, don't sit and convince them. Especially when you're trying to found something, you need a lot of will to kick something off. So later on, we founded Dubai Poetry Slam. So we founded this 2015. And it was a series of events after that concert, right? I did an Arabic talk series. This girl attended from Australia. She had founded Bankstown Poetry Slam. She moved to the co-working space from Australia. She got the job at the co-working space where I was doing my talk series. And then she called us again. She's like, let's do a poetry slam. So it was just like a series of community spaces in dialogue. And then again, with our open mic at that time, 2015, you go to a cafe in Dubai, you say, I want to do an open mic. They're like, what the hell is an open mic? Like, it was a very, very different place, right? But then you find spaces that will just shake your hand and adopt you. Like, have this willingness to take the risk and ask and connect. And don't be too bothered about rejections, because once someone is able to recognize you. Dubai Poetry Slam it's just a small open mic, right, that you do for poets. It's not $1 million business. We've been running it for a decade. And it's non-profit, right? And just taking on a life of its own. And I have at least 20 friends just from that open mic that we are very close and we've been friends for a very long time now. The lesson is they need to be able to recognize what you're saying. If they're not speaking the same language and you're not on the same page, don't invest in that conversation. You'll know at first sight whether or not the conversation should keep going. But then sometimes if someone is just rejecting without necessarily listening, this is not a conversation I would invest in. So yeah, this was a very practical outreach strategy.
It's practical, but it's also emotional at the same time, because you're talking a lot about like feeling. If you feel it's right, you go for it. So where is like the good middle ground between like practical and emotional approach? Because you seem to combine both.
For example, when we spoke to the rappers, it was a very professional email with a deck and all of that. But I think we weren't afraid to send the email. Often we're like, should we approach this person? No, they won't be interested. You don't even hit the send button. You don't even go for it. Let them give the answer. Don't speak for them. If they completely ghost you, that's fine, right? If they reject it, that's fine. The idea of just going for it is that, do your job. You do need to explain what you're doing. You do need to have a really good brief. You do need to have a rationality, right? You need to show that you are a good project manager, and you do need to approach people professionally or within a way that makes sense. But then don't be afraid, like if someone is a really big name, let them decide whether or not they're going to reply. Approach them, and then it's up to them, but don't speak for them. Right? Because what if they say yes? And that's what happened with us. So the tourism agency, for example, that had sponsored the tickets from the US, I met, I think, at a coffee shop at the Language Institute where I was learning German.
Why?
Yeah, I don't know. My half-siblings grew up in Germany. It's a lifelong thing of me trying to learn German and of them trying to teach me German.
Same here.
Yeah, and we were just having a conversation and I was like, so and so and so. He's like, oh yeah, we'll pay for your tickets, right? So be proud of what you're working on, express it, present it well. Don't speak for people. Maybe they'll say yes. And that's what happened. That first project really taught me that people say yes, but work on your project, flesh it out, do the work.
But in terms of culture, that's on the scale of emotional and practical. Your approach is more unique or it's more common? Like in Arabic culture, are you more practical or more emotional in terms of like this approach?
And again, I think it's, being a poli-sci student, the way you justify why you do things maybe is a little bit differently. What the projects I come up with are perhaps more emotional, but I would put that quote unquote. For me, I don't see it as emotional because I come from a community development background. So for me, I see the technicalities behind why you should have, for example, a lab series first. And we design for the social aspects of these events. Like they don't happen on their own. Like we intend specific furniture. We intend specific refreshments. We even play with the layout of the room where it almost helps people take a corner and have their own conversation or their own breakout there. So we design for these things. These are, I think, in the mainstream called emotional, but because we're aware of how it works or of like more data behind these sorts of interactions, I would see it as technical, right? The reason we still run Dubai Poetry Slam is not just because I love poetry, but then I also recognize that when you have a specific headline, you bring in like-minded people together, right? So people interested in poetry will show up to a poetry slam. I know that people who come up, yes, they're poets and they'll say their piece, but because they're surrounded by already 30, 40 people who they already have something in common with, they'll come out as friends. And for me, that's important with community building and by and large, peacekeeping. I don't know what part is emotional and what part is practical. Probably the interest is emotional because it's personal, it's specific to me. But then the execution, somehow there are things that are practical. There are rules to the game, right? As an Arab, there are things that probably my social skills I learned from my mother. So you'll see this in Damascus or Beirut, in the Levant. I think these are also universal traits of really knowing how to speak to someone in public. I know in Eastern Europe and Russia, it's something similar. Like you can be at a cafe or at the salon and suddenly become friends with the women next to you and you didn't know each other. It is a social skill. I do know I took it from my mom because she's really good at it and people tell me I'm good at it. I would only say just don't be afraid, right? Don't be afraid of saying, hey, that's a really cool bag. Or what are you working on? Or have we met? So I think maybe that kind of minor risk-taking in social situations I get from my mom. I see it in the Arab community being utilized. I think that's helped me be a community builder. That's helped me working on a project that, right, it's not a university project, nor is it a job, right? It's things I do for free. Like, do you know what I mean? Obviously, these skills translate really well to my workspace, but I do know that I work on a lot of things that, quite frankly, I don't have to work on. Like, but we do it anyway. Maybe the non-Arab part, or maybe the Dubai part is that, and maybe this is something unique to Dubai, that you do work on projects you don't have to work on, but because you love the project. Whereas, coming from Damascus, it's a troubled country. People are more needs-based because you're thinking of putting food on the table. So maybe that's privilege of being able to be here and being able to, do things that maybe in another context I'm wasting time. I think that answers the question in a way and tells you, again, why peacekeeping is important. Because when somewhere is secure, we have the privilege of being creative.
Back to the poetry slam. Why poetry in the first place? Do you love poetry, or poetry is the most peaceful in the art scene? Why? Why did you choose that?
So we were 4 co-founders, now we're 2. Sarah had done Bankstown Poetry Slam. I was already interested in poetry, but she was the one that kind of brought us together to start it because, she had left Australia and she wanted to replicate something in Dubai. Poetry was interesting, I think, because it allows for expression and it's a balance between creativity. Why it's different from singing is that maybe you still want to express and perform beautifully, but maybe you don't have a singing voice. You can still write, but it's still creative enough that I still need to enjoy you performing it. With Dubai Poetry Slam, so it's spoken word poetry, which is performative poetry. It's different than just reading a poem out loud. You still need to perform it. You can use the volume of your voice, you can whisper, you can pause, you can use some props, some elements. There is a performance to it. So for example, Salim Attas, he's one of my favorite poets. You feel like you're watching stand-up comedy when he does his poetry. And I think that's what makes him very successful because he understands it is a performance. It's not just reading out loud. So I think poetry, we were in college, it was fun. And again, many people can't sing. So there was this inclusivity, but it was still enough of a challenge. You still need to be creative. I still need to enjoy it. And we used to run it in a ludicrous way, and it was intentional. I think that was part of its success, and that's what made our platform approachable. So for example, you'd get 3 prizes, but literally third prize was a tissue. Second prize would be something like a tea bag. And then first prize is a watermelon.
Nice.
we were intentionally ridiculous just so that to kind of take the edge off the idea of winning or losing. And I do think that's also what made our platform very unique for a long time. And that's what made it approachable. So I saw poets come back every month and develop their poetry because the ridiculousness of our prizes made us approachable. Now we give proper prizes because we collaborate with 25 Hours Hotel. So you get
2 watermelons, 2
and
chivas.
a glass of water.
And a glass of water. No, now you get a one-night stay at the hotel.
Nice.
But sometimes I miss, because we used to do a supermarket run before every poetry slam and just get 3 random items. So each time people were also interested to see what the hell are they going to give us this time. I miss that, to be honest. So maybe we'll bring that back for second prize and third prize. Let's see.
Yeah, that would be fun. I've seen some time ago, there was a meme going around, what profession do people of different countries would want to become? And for most of the Arabic-speaking world, it was poet.
Yeah.
You look everywhere, poet. Does it also apply to Syria?
Yes, 100%. I think Arabs have a very long tradition with poetry. And I think poetry is powerful as a tool where, again, it challenges you as an artist, where it has to be beautiful or entertaining or whatever it is that the audience will give you consent to carry on. That's the thing about art, is that it is a two-way relationship. That the audience needs to give me permission to carry on. So whether I'm making them laugh or I'm making them feel something, there is permission that you take, and that's the challenge of performance. You need to be able to sense make very quickly and get the acceptance of the room, so you need to understand the audience's energy, and you guys need to sync. And again, there are technicalities to this. We teach this with the workshops. If you feel their energy is really low, maybe ask them to stand up, right? Or ask them to hum, or ask them to say something back to you. So there are technicals that you can use to control the room or to start to be in dialogue with the room before your piece. You know, the Arab world, it's prehistoric or ancient relationship because of the way Arabic developed. And then poetry can be utilized in very different ways. So I can tell a story. Maybe I don't want to tell a story. Maybe I just want to play around with a feeling, right? So when we do our prompts with the poetry workshops, I'd ask them, what does moonlight sound like? So it's just for you to be able to think of things maybe a little bit more diagonally. It doesn't have to be a real story. And again, it doesn't have to be a story. In that sense, you have a very wide range of people who feel like they can express whatever it is they want to express through poetry as a medium. If you want it to be provocative, it can be. I think it can really match your personality because it's very, very personal. Whereas, for example, with music, there's an expectation of what it should sound like. For example, there is that with poetry, but because it's not an instrument or, do you know what I mean? It can be very, very personal. And this is rule number 1 in the workshops. We say, write something only you can write. Because if you're writing something that, okay, this is what a poem should sound like, or you're mimicking something else, you're going to get bored because your brain knows it's not important. But if you're writing something only you can write, it'll be prioritized and you'll get good.
And it would feel more authentic, to you.
Exactly.
It's usually very hard when you start doing something, to be authentic, because you just don't understand what is authentic. What am I?
Yeah, but you first have to answer the question.
Yeah, that's the hard thing. Do you help them to answer the question? Who are they to be authentic?
We do that through the prompts. We don't ask it as a direct question. Because then, again, there's always this balance of, they're going to give me the answer they think they have to give me. We don't do that, but we use prompts. For example, one of my favorite prompts is, if your secrets can speak to each other, what would they say?
Nice.
Right?
Oh my God, now I will start thinking.
Exactly, right? And then they have to write a poem during that workshop. There was another, this is a workshop I didn't do. It was another poet, but I heard about it. It was during Emirates Literature Festival. And her prompt was, write, in just a descriptive manner, you washing the corpse of one of your loved ones. Within 10 minutes, the entire room was crying. And it wasn't even a poem. But I think sometimes it's about how can I get them to imagine a very specific feeling very quickly, or how to explore something that it might not occur to you to explore. Another thing is, for example, if history can speak, what would it say?
What is a good community to you? You are the community builder.
Yeah.
So when do you understand that the community that you've built is working properly? What is it?
3 things come to mind very quickly. One is their trust. So the way we measure that is, are the people who attend, have they created projects with each other? That entails a level of trust. And also, are they approaching us with their projects? So that also entails a level of trust. Number 2 is openness. So again, making sure that people know we're, let's say, whether I'm at a co-working space or now at MIZA or whatever, finding ways to communicate that we are open, we are approachable, and people feel like they can approach once and then come back. Because if there isn't this repeat interaction, then a community is not going to form. The third thing I would say is, I don't want to say output, but yeah, depending on what you're building as a community, how do you measure that impact? So are people coming back? Are people, again, approaching you with newer projects? Are they bringing in their friends? How does it feel organic? At least for me, let's say when I'm the manager, it's fine, right? Because I know how to bring people in, right? If I see someone in the corner, I go up, oh, are you alone? Come with us. I'm able to do that. And I'm not afraid to do that because somehow I own that space. And that makes a very big difference with the energy of the room. But then how I would measure community spaces, let's say when I'm coming in as a user, is did anybody talk to me? Did I feel welcome? Did I feel like I'm able to have a conversation with someone I don't know? Did I feel I can be myself? Or at least that you can be off guard in a sense where I can't present myself as Afaf. I don't have to pretend that I'm an influencer. Do you know what I mean? I can just present myself as I am. The right gym can be a great community, but there are community spaces where you can walk away and then more than one person will say, yeah, it's pretentious. We can't quite put our finger on it. For me, as a community builder and understanding the relationship between design and people, I can tell you why they think it's pretentious. And sometimes, companies make silly mistakes. Like there aren't enough places to sit. They're design choices. But for me, it's, did I feel welcome? Did I feel somebody interacted with me? Did I feel like people want me to leave? Like, do you know what I mean? Like, it's a big deal. It's about the people that run the space. It doesn't happen on its own. And I think it's immature for the managers of the space to think it can happen. It can happen on its own. But the bane shouldn't be on the user. You do need to design for social interaction and you need to host. I think it is up to being very intentional about, opening up or breaking the ice, right? Because again, especially in Dubai, these are sober spaces. So what's the difference between a cafe and a bar? In a bar, you can start to drink. It's easier to break the ice and it's designed for that, right? The lights are dimmed. There is music. There's always somewhere to look. It's designed for social interaction. At a cafe, you're not going to speak to someone as easily as you would at a bar. I think with community spaces, they kind of need to think of, it's like, you guys, it's afternoon. People are awake. They're very sober and they're there for a purpose. It's not only to socialize. There are elements like breaking the ice needs to be designed for. For example, some anatomy that we use.
Yeah, what are the best icebreakers?
So for example, we create something called a watering hole. So we put the coffee and karak and whatever at a corner. We did this for a supper club recently. We kept enough distance between that corner and the supper club table. So that created a flow where people would get up to pour themselves tea or coffee, but there were no servers. In the end, there was enough space also for them to not feel they're in the way of like traffic. So in the end, you had everybody kind of clustering up in between the table and the coffee station speaking. But that was an intentional design. Designing for social interaction is important, and I think speaking to interior designers and architects about this is also can be very useful for community spaces. So are there ways to create elements of privacy? So sometimes just introducing a curtain to your space can make a big deal. Thinking about traffic flow. So when you want to create, for example, this watering hole effect that we talked about, which is natural in humans, right? We usually cluster around the water fountain or the whatever. Make sure it doesn't interrupt traffic because then people feel they're in the way. So thinking about that from like a user experience perspective. Again, like people think it's emotional. Yes, it's emotional, but it is technical. If you just think of the components and try to imagine, okay, when do I feel like I can stay in the space? When am I in somebody's way? And the icebreaker was literally, is this tea or is this coffee? And then they're speaking to each other. Simple as that. They just want an excuse to be able to make eye contact without being weird.
I believe that most of our listeners are expats, living somewhere abroad, most probably in Dubai. And when I talk to expats, they very often ask me questions because I live in Dubai for 5 years, and they're like, where do I go? Where do I make friends? So, and after this conversation we just had now, I wanted to ask you to name a couple of communities in Dubai where you can come and feel welcomed, even though maybe you've just arrived yesterday?
I mean, El Sirkal is a great one. We all have our qualms, I bet. But El Sirkal is a great public space. 25 Hours Hotel is one of my favorite spaces. I think those are broadly universal. Depending on what you do need to become more and more specific. So whether you want to become a member at a specific working space or frequent a specific bar in a specific area. So like for some people, I recommend the IFC, depending on what they're going for and what their needs are.
And what you're looking for.
Yeah. And then there are also specific gyms. So
networking gym.
Yeah, not just okay, let me be a nerd here. From a sociology perspective, the reason we go book club, tennis club, blah blah club, blah blah club is that as soon as I've defined at least one element, the people who go there already know what to expect. If you like jiu-jitsu, go for it. So yeah, Al Sirkal, ICD, 25 hours, I think for me come to mind very quickly. And then from those, you're gonna branch out a lot. Think of the specificity of where you're going, and yeah, you need to try. Instagram is useful. Like there's a page called Dubai Pike. They seem to know everything that's going on all the time. And I think the rule is go there more than once for long enough, right? It's not about just going there once, but I think the frequency and the proximity to the same group of people will work. And yeah, like be like my mom, ask. Like it's fine. People respond. Some people might not, but so what, right? But people respond. People who understand you very quickly will respond.
This thing with the ask thing, I mean, I'm super reserved and I'm super shy, so it's hard.
Become a smoker.
Nah,
this is not healthy advice.
That's not healthy advice.
Yeah, but that's a good community builder in the end.
I was sitting with a bunch of designers the other day and we were thinking of like the anatomy of a smoking area. Literally, it hits so many interesting community building aspects. So number one is ritual. We're all united by ritual. It shares commonalities with like a church. Do you know? Like we're all united. We go in, we're reunited by ritual. It's made for you to stay for a bit. The seating's usually in shade. There's usually a tree. There's usually something really comfortable. Again, like going back to specificity, I already know you're all smokers. We already have something great in common. And then a very easy icebreaker is, can I have a lighter? I have made a ridiculous amount of friends in smoking areas. In terms of community, I've learned a lot. Like it achieves very interesting components of ease of design. So there, consider it. Oh, sorry, you were asking a question.
No. I'm actually that is a quite good example of like the community building thing, even though it's not healthy.
Yeah.
But in the end, that works.
Yeah. So I think maybe like as someone who's reserved, I would say go somewhere where you already know what to expect. Like start there.
My question was not about like being shy and everything. I got used to that.
Okay.
I am in Dubai and maybe I want to learn more about Arabic culture, but I come from another culture and I have a lot of biased things and, I would be super shy and maybe afraid just like to come to an Arab person and ask, like, I don't know if I'm being rude, to intervene or anything. Like, I don't want to approach and I don't want to start with the wrong foot,
Yeah.
What should I do? I mean, do I come to the guy and I was like, hi, I want to learn more about your traditions. So let's sit down. What do you want? Tea? Coffee? Let's go.
Cigarette.
Yeah. So, like, I'll reflect with me, let's say with my European friends. I think don't approach him as an Arab man. Approach him as an individual. And you already know how to get to know an individual.
Yeah.
Right. So
they have a letter.
Yeah, exactly. Start that conversation in terms of, okay, let me figure out this person's individuality. And from that, I'll learn about the culture. Because let's say when you're speaking to me, I'm from Damascus, I have a religious practice, I'm visibly Muslim, but you're going to get to know me as a person. But what you get to know about my culture is maybe a different set of experiences than the next Arab person, right? So I think collectively, this is what our culture is. But you're not necessarily going to learn everything from one person. So I think go for the individual, you're going to catch something. And then go for the next individual and you'll catch something else. But I think I wouldn't approach it as being afraid of doing something wrong or being afraid. Just, start wherever you can start. Focus on the particularities. Are they an architect? Why do I keep saying architect? I think we keep talking about design today. Are they a barista? Like something more interesting. Are they an entrepreneur? Are they a banker? Or are they in retail? Like I think getting to know them with the easier details that across the world we have in common. I think that was also me and Anastasia. We come from very different cultures, but we bonded over our love for community, our love for entrepreneurship. The relationship will work somehow. we will celebrate together eventually. And then I learned different aspects of Russian culture, even though she's never told me Russian culture is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? But then you just sense make. There's never going to be this one person that will represent their culture fully. And I don't think we can. And it's hard to be approached in that way. I think if someone's approaching me to learn about Syrian culture, that's a lot of pressure. So it's like, please don't.
That's what we are doing right now.
Exactly. But again, I'm a specific vertical. And I think this is why I introduced myself of saying, listen, my parents emigrated a long time ago. I have many nationalities. I have many nationalities in my family. But still, during celebrations, we have Syrian food. Each of us has our own interpretation. When you're coming, and this is advice I also give Syrians when they come to Dubai. Because when they come across a European person, I'm like, listen, whatever you think, you need to unthink it. Because the messaging that you've received and whatever the movies you've watched, what's been communicated is a movie, not a person.
What do Syrians need to unthink about Europeans, let's say?
So, for example, let's say a Syrian who's never traveled outside Syria and has only watched Friends. This is not what you should expect necessarily. I think we don't know anything about European family life. We don't know about, specific habits or how someone who's European will host you in their house, for example, right? This has never been communicated, right? So, for example, when I go to somebody's house, I know to bring something with me because I just assume it's universal enough. But then, I'm sure you guys would face the same thing. It's like, oh, when do we take off our shoes? Because you're somehow aware at some point you take off your shoes. But then there are Arab households where say, please keep your shoes on. I think the more intimate elements, the more personal elements, the more real elements, and the more daily elements, zero communication. So when you finally meet them, they're not Tom Cruise, right? This is not a Marvel movie. And this goes back to privilege, being able to travel from a young age and being able to mix with many different cultures at a very personal level very early on made me surprised to see the assumptions that people would make. So when I go back to Syria and I deal with someone who's never even been outside Damascus, I just try to reiterate you don't have the answer. Because even if you have a PhD in Russian literature, let's say, you need to meet a Russian. That's just how it is. Each person you meet is completely different from the next. Imagine something just really boring. You're working on your laptop, drinking your coffee. That's never been communicated to Syrians. Do you know what I mean? So yeah, I would say, just have honest conversations. I always maintain, especially when I'm trying to create shared spaces, people have to be able to walk in as question marks and as just individuals, and you need to give them that, right? So be it different cultures or different races, or even sometimes there are spaces where men walk in and they're treated, oh, okay, but he's a man. Or spaces for sure that women are walking in, oh, but she's walking in as a woman. I think people need to be able to walk into spaces as question marks, be able to communicate what they need to. So for example, even in the workspace, I don't go in as a female programming manager. I'm just a programming manager. Or you don't go in as a male nurse. You go in as a nurse, right? Freedom of criteria is really important.
That's cool to put it like this.
Yeah.
Freedom of criteria.
Yeah.
The vice versa question. What are the wrong assumptions made by the world about Syrians, maybe, Syrian culture, if there are any?
There are many. I think regionally, we've had some very bad PR. The Middle East generally, since 2001, the only narrative that's been spoken about us, especially in international media, has been through our criminals. And that's a ridiculous notion because every single country, you have prisons, you have a criminal community, you have troublemakers. And the get-go shouldn't be that you represent a community through its criminals, right? So when I think of the US, I don't think of Ted Bundy. I don't think Ted Bundy is representative of American culture. I think the region so far, the only narrative that's very commonly associated with it is our criminals. I mean, it's a ridiculous notion because criminals are everywhere, right? It's part of human nature. That's why we have a built environment, and that's why we have law and order, and that's why we talk about philosophy and sociology, and even this conversation. That's just how human beings are. For Arab cultures or perhaps Syrian cultures, it's tricky because it is a spectrum. I think I want to say we're normal, but that's a non-answer, right? Perhaps when, let's say, someone European is approaching somebody Arab, don't make assumptions on how conservative they are. A good way to express it is don't make assumptions on how they express how conservative they are. For example, I'm a conservative woman, but that's me, right? That doesn't involve anybody I'm dealing with. For sure, what comes up is assumptions about open-mindedness, assumptions about being conservative, assumptions about interests in arts and science, assumptions about maybe hobbies that we keep, assumptions about I think also our daily behavior, there's zero communication about it. And I'm already being straight stereotypical by leading with the religious aspect, but that's not true. I think we're a very nuanced community. And I think a lot of people, regardless of how they express their own personal life, there is a huge willingness to connect with anyone and everyone. And I think this is why, at least for me, I'm always creating community spaces on different verticals of what people could love. Bringing together poets as poets. It doesn't matter where you're from. It doesn't matter what your background is or what your practice is or what your spirituality is. That you can find a way to love each other through this. Creating shared spaces and spaces for collaboration is that I have seen, it's not just I think, I have seen people connect and create great projects together, but then in a very stereotypical sense on paper or how media narratives are typically told, they shouldn't be getting along. But they do, because people will find ways to connect each other. Dubai is very interesting for this. Where else am I going to have this conversation? I was talking to someone, her name was Olivia. She's American. She's living in Copenhagen. And I was like to her, where else are you going to meet me if not in Dubai? You're not going to go to Syria. If I go to Copenhagen, I'm not going to meet you. So I think Dubai is very interesting in that where are the three of us are ever going to find ourselves in the same room anywhere else? So there is a success story in the city that we haven't quite defined. Where can you point to where, there are enough shared spaces where you can even ask me this question of what are assumptions people make about Syrians? I wonder. So I think this is a very big question. And I know for sure as someone who's just trying to make it the mission of her life is creating shared spaces this is a very big question, and it's just recognizing that individuals are a lot more than their national cultures. That's how I would answer the question. On the spot, I suppose. I don't know.
That's an amazing answer. I think that's what culture mapping is actually for. I mean, our podcast.
Your family is very international, as you've mentioned. So you have cousins in China, Germany, all over the world. But what are traditions or maybe traits or something that still defines you all as a Syrian family?
Food. Any sort of food ritual really stands out, which is amazing. The way we come together during celebrations, the way we celebrate each other, the way we crave like having breakfast, or when we all go to Damascus, you go to the mountains, you have a picnic, you go to the meadows, social gatherings also around food. And then how sometimes we have weird recipes in the family because of all the mixes. I think we have a very interesting palette. I think food and then food gatherings is still Syrian. That would be the running stream. But then also it's how we've learned about all the other kind of food habits of everybody else. And I think that is a global commonality of food gatherings.
And what about gifts? What is the perfect gift to give to a Syrian person?
Oh, we love perfume. We do love perfume. I can already hear people disagreeing. So I think some stereotypical gifts, especially let's say, so within our community, when I still don't know someone very well, what should I get them as a gift? So perfume. There are also like expensive chocolate, expensive dates, expensive honey come to mind as well. Branding. And then there's also some honey that's like sidr honey is like well known in the community. So these are kind of the three things. Because in Syria, at least within the Muslim community, or the Christian community is different, but there isn't wine culture. So I know if you're speaking to a Christian Syrian, they would say wine. I want to say really good olive oil, but that's really more so when you know someone. It wouldn't be like a first gift, but let's say you're going to somebody's house. These come to mind. Something that's like known to be valuable. Perfume, chocolate, dates.
Nice. I like dates.
Yeah.
Me too. Please tell us, what is the trait of a character of a Syrian person you're very proud of and you wish every person in the world would have?
So generosity, I think. And not just generosity in terms of like they'll give you a really expensive gift, not in that sense, but willingness to help, willingness to collaborate. That would be something I wish like I would see more of. And even nowadays, I think our community is pretty troubled and we're almost losing that kind of willingness to, just to push someone forward just because you're helping them. I do still see it, but I think that's a trait I'm really proud of.
Great.
And that's beautiful.
Yeah, that's
Thank
beautiful.
You very much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, guys.
And a quick reminder, this season is sponsored by Flower Wow, a marketplace where you can find the right gift for your loved ones. Download the app through the link in the description. Use the promo code CULTURE, it's CULTURE, to get a 15% discount on anything you want. This discount works until December 2024. By supporting our sponsors, you support us. Thank you so much. We will hear each other quite soon.